Om, this word is the whole universe. It is explained that everything...
Theologians, so we are looking into Hinduism, and so we want to be able to just think about and write down, what do you know about Hinduism, and what do you want to know? What do you want to learn? So we're going to start off with a video first, just giving a little bit of a history in the background, and then we'll get into talking just a little bit about some of the key terms and thoughts that fall within this philosophy, and then we'll go from there.
Hinduism is the third largest religion in the world, with more than 1 billion adherents globally. It ranks just below Christianity and Islam and is considered to be one of the world's oldest active religions. So where did it all start? What's the history of Hinduism? First and foremost, Hinduism doesn't have one specific set of teachings, nor a specific holy doctrine or founder, though it may have originated as far back as 3000 BCE with the Indus Valley Civilization near the current border of Pakistan and India. Although Hinduism is commonly classified as a religion, it is also considered a philosophy and a culture because the belief system has no standard method of practice. It's considered to be one of the most tolerant religions in the world. Hinduism is closely associated with other Eastern religions. In fact, Hinduism incorporated concepts like karma and reincarnation around the same time that similar concepts emerged in Buddhism and Jainism. These ideas deal with the cycle of life and rebirth, as well as the consequences of a person's actions. Another major distinguishing feature of Hinduism compared to most other active religions is its belief in multiple deities. The primary three are Shiva, Vishnu, and Brahma, but there are many others. However, some Hindus consider these deities to be manifestations of a single cosmic spirit called Brahman, who is genderless and omnipotent. Many Hindus also consider the ancient Vedic texts to be sacred. The scripture was written in Sanskrit around 1000 BCE as a hymn to the gods. Within the Veda, multiple major and minor deities are described, including Indra, the king of gods, and Vishnu, a protector god. Today, Hindus recite verses from this text ritualistically during weddings and funerals. Currently, about 15% of the world's population subscribes to Hinduism, with roughly 99% of Hindus residing in India and Nepal. In nations like Mauritius, Fiji, and Guyana, Hindus also constitute a large minority. In America, there are also about 2 million Hindus who make up about 0.5% of the population. Hinduism started in South Asia and continues to thrive there. India's relationship with Hinduism is deep, with the Hindu Nationalist Indian People's Party currently wielding power. India's Prime Minister is also the latest in a long line of predominantly Hindu leaders. By 2050, Hinduism is expected to grow by 34% to about 1.4 billion adherents globally. However, as its influence is limited outside Asia, the religion will most likely stay in the number 3 spot behind Christianity and Islam for a long time to come. For a look at one extreme ancient Hindu practice, check out this video from This Happened Here Now. The interplay of hot asphalt and cooling water might be a nod to the goddess Shitala herself, whose name translates roughly to the one who cools. Thanks for watching TestTube News. Subscribe for new videos every day.
So beginning to thinking about the definition of what is Hinduism, and when we begin to think about Hinduism, it's not easy to be able to define and to pinpoint. There are many different definitions for it. That even the first prime minister, Nehru, he stated that for Hinduism, the way that he defined it, he replied, "Hinduism is all things to all men." And that reflects some of the difficulties. And even though that kind of sounds like Paul in 1 Corinthians chapter 9, I become all things to all men, but this is where he says, for now trying to pinpoint and define what is Hinduism, he says that it is all things to all men. So what does that actually mean? When we begin to think about just as far as the emergence of Hinduism within the 19th century, that we could be able to label it in several different terms. And there's one, just thinking of the missionaries who gave it the term, just as well as they were coming into the region of India and seeing that they were polytheistic and the many gods that were there, that it's all things to all men. So whatever they wanted it to be, these different gods. And then also just thinking about the geographical way that we define Hinduism. It received its title, its pronunciation, just from the Indus River, but those who were in the region who were not the native people, in the way that they were trying to pronounce the Indus River, they couldn't do it without pronouncing putting a strong H sound at the beginning. So instead of Indius, they would say Hindius. And so it became the name of the people who live along the Indus River, or as they then would call it, the Hindius River. So that's one way of just defining it, of thinking of that it's many things to different people. There's also the geographical term that it refers to in the region, and then there's cultural. So the people who are Hindus that are born in India, so that could refer to just Hinduism, but then also just to authority in two different ways. So one who accepts certain ancient texts in Hinduism without the doctrinal commitment, and then on the other side, that those who share a common doctrinal core, so they do believe what it teaches and that they practice it. And then there's just a social aspect, just as in many different religions, where people who hold to social obligations like the caste system and dietary laws without really holding to the doctrinal core beliefs. Within Hinduism, it is shaped and formed by their sacred texts that they have. And so there are the 4 Vedas, and these Vedas then, within the 4 Vedas, referred to as the Sanhitas. Not sounds like fajitas, but the Sanhitas has been broken down into the 4 Vedas. And within the 4 Vedas then, that the essential to this corpus of material that is in the praise of certain early gods and goddesses that were worshipped in every of the earliest days. These books are divided into poems or hymns. For example, like the Rig Veda is actually divided into 10 smaller books. And these 10 books collectively contain 1,028 hymns that are then sung to these various gods. So most of these gods are associated with nature, such as the god of sky, the god of fire, the god of the sun, the god of wind, and the dawn. And these early hymns of praise to God later, they get these hymns in another metric form. So just to think about some of them. And then the second type of writings is the Upanishads. So the Upanishads is what we're going to look at and examine these 10 themes that derive from this text. Look at the 10 themes that are in the Upanishads. First is Brahman. So Brahman is the ultimate reality. And we could talk about him in one or two ways. So they're usually talk about in their nirguna, without qualities. So this is a higher form in which you talk about God, as opposed to the saguna. So the gununa is the lower base form of being able to talk about God with qualities. And this is usually where the problem with Hinduism's have with talking with Christians, because we primarily do it in that second way. When we talk about Christ and his incarnation, the one who God then came to man, and that God is love, that God interacts with us, that this is the quality that is of a lower essence than talking about God as without qualities. But again, we can be able to talk about God in this way, even if we get into sharing with someone. We could begin to talk about the Trinity. So God, who is high above and outside of time and space in his own being. So that is one way that we can do it, to be able to stay on the nirguna, without qualities aspect. So the Atman then is our soul or essence, the I, which is the basis of all reality that migrates from body to body. And then the Tatma Asi, thou art that and you are that. So all three of these terms have an interrelated relationship to them. So the Atman is the word for the soul or the essence in Hinduism, where the Atman refers to the ground of our being, and it is our essence. It is sometimes translated as the universal soul. And this is a part of then looking at for reincarnation. The Atman is that which migrates from body to body, and it is re-manifested in various lifetimes. It is the essence of the person that lies beneath all of the outward accretions, including the human body. So it is the self. And then this is what leads into the Ta'ama Asi. So the Ta'ama Asi, translated thou art that, or you art that, is a phrase that comes from one of the Upanishads, and it is in reference to a discussion that goes on between a teacher and his student. In the course of this guru talking to his student, he points to various things, and he sees and he tells the student that the essence of that item, whether it be a rock or a person, that is what they are. So you are the essence of a lump of clay. Whatever it is that one points to, it shares the same essence that you share. So the key insight of the Upanishads is the recognition that your essence is identical to the essence of the universe. And seeing the example of looking to the side here where we have this salt that is being poured into water. So once the salt in itself, what it is, then becomes something else when it is assimilated within the water, where you cannot tell the difference then between the water and the salt, that they become one. This is the Tatama Asi, that art that. So you are this, but then you are that. And we'll talk about some other examples too, they use with the clay in a vessel and the air that is on the outside, but is also in the inside. So the only thing that's separating them is that container. But if that container was to break, then Ta'ama Asi, it's assimilated into being the same thing. And so it is that they believe with the body. The body is just a capsule, and then once released, it becomes something else, assimilated into the universe, or the journey into becoming one with Brahma, the ultimate reality. So that samsara is also then represented within this this concept. I don't know if I have, there we go. So I have the flag that's there. So in the, for India, their flag, the whale in the center represents this concept, this philosophical concept of the samsara. So samsara is the flow or the ever-turning wheel. And it's that we live, we die, we're reborn. There's transmigration and reincarnation that come from this doctrine. So as we begin our life, we start on the wheel, and at the goal of life is to be able to reach the moksha, which is the number 7, the term that's on there. Moksha would be the equivalent to what we refer to as a salvation or deliverance. And that we, for Hindus or humanity, we are stuck on this wheel. And if we cannot get off, so even thinking about life, death, reborn, reincarnation, that you're on the wheel, you start on the wheel, and you're never getting off until you understand this concept of the Ta'ama Asi, that your Atman is a part of the universe, and that it's just making this journey. And that when you come to that realization, that enlightenment, you can then reach to the ultimate point of being assimilated into the Brahman, ultimate reality. So with the Maya is a false way of looking at the world due to ignorance or superimposition of reality, ultimate reality upon it. And so that oftentimes that we're mistaken. The ways that we view one thing can be an illusion. It's not actually what it is. So sometimes I may use the example of thinking of, you walk into a room and you see a snake, but then as you come upon closer observation, you realize that it was just a rope that was coiled up in a corner. So not all things are as they seem. And then for the 6th theme is karma. So karma is an act or deed. Most of you have probably heard this before, and you hear it in movies and are using it, bad karma, an immutable law of cause and effect that either embeds or liberates you from samsara. So based upon your works, what you have done, then within the wheel of samsara, it can liberate you. It can move you into having a better life to be reincarnated. And then hopefully as you move through, and I forget how many times you have to be reincarnated, then you can be liberated. I think it's like in the thousands. And when you reach that point, then you can finally be released and assimilated into the Brahman. We had talked about, I mentioned earlier, so that with moksha is a release, a salvation from the wheel of samsara based upon your karma, and that this is then the goal. It's the goal to be free and liberated and delivered. The monism that there's one ultimate principle of existence of being, and that this is where some of the Hindus would say that they're monotheistic in that sense, or monoism, that there is one sense of reality that is then displayed through these various different gods that they interact with, but it's all aiming towards a one Brahman. Yoga is one of the 6 schools of Hindu philosophy, so it's a way towards this liberation where you can get into the so the sound that resonates through the entire universe. And, interesting, we think about yoga as just being stretches or, exercise, but it is part of a philosophy. So it's positions and postures to be able to engage your mind and your soul to be able to obtain this state of enlightenment. It's often then connected with one of their deities as well. And this last phrase here is broken into 3 words here. The sat being, translation, the chit for the consciousness, and the ananadad for the bless or joy. And reason putting this in here is not one of the themes, but it is used sometimes in Christian conversation with Hindus for the 3 aspects of the Trinity. And so just putting it there to mention it. So this is the beginning, just thinking about the 10 themes, talked about the definition itself, and then in our next lesson we'll talk about some of the other aspects of Hinduism.